Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another session of Ask the HR Expert. As attendees continue to trickle in, I see people popping in right now. I want to take time to introduce myself and talk a little bit about what the Ask the HR Expert is and some housekeeping items before we dive in. So my name is Marcus Wilbers. I am the Chief Client Officer and General Counsel here at Tandem HR. I was a employment lawyer in a prior life and have been working at Tandem for the past 4 years. The Ask the HR Expert webinar series is one that we host every month on a variety of HR topics. And we try to do it in a panel discussion, almost like a podcast format, so that it's very conversational and we hope very interactive. So if you have topics that you think would be interesting for us to cover, please let us know. We're always open to new ideas. Also, if you have questions during the webinar, please let us know those too. You can submit questions to us if you look down at the bottom of the screen, the Q&A tab. If you click on that icon, you can submit a question. I'm monitoring that, and I'll try and weave in those questions as we go. If we're not able to approach it or address it as we go, I'll take them up at the end of the presentation. I'll also have contact information at the end of the presentation today, so that if we don't get to your question, you should feel free to email us after, and we'll get you the best answer that we have. So our topic today is recruiting and onboarding strategies that will transform your hiring process. Now, before we officially start, I want to make everyone aware that we are recording today's session. So if you did register for the session today, you will get a recording of this webinar in your inbox as soon as we finish. That doesn't mean you have to drop off. Please participate with us, but you will get a recording of the webinar, so you don't have to worry about taking notes or things like that. Feel free to share this with any of your colleagues that you think might find it interesting. Also, we've placed everyone on mute. That's not because we don't want to hear from you. We do. It's because we want to be sure that we can hear each other talk and that we have a clear understanding of what's being said. So if you do, like I said, have a question, send that to us in the chat box. Let's see. I think we are ready to begin. So I have some wonderful speakers here with me, some of my colleagues at Tandem HR. So I will let them introduce themselves. Caitlin, Jackie, Jason, and Renee. Do you guys want to share a little bit about yourselves with our audience?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Caitlin Thompson, HR business partner, and I've been in HR for about 9 years now. I started my HR journey as a recruiter. So recruiting and onboarding strategy has always been a passion of mine. I've specialized in creating and executing plans for very hard to staff positions, mainly targeting passive candidates and dealing with high volume of candidates as well. I've been at Tandem for about a year now, really happy here with some awesome colleagues.
Hi, my name is Jackie Anderson. I am a HR client relations manager here at Tandem HR. I have about 20 plus years of HR experience, primarily working as internal HR with private industry, coming to work with Tandem in 2020. I'm HR certified. I hold a master's in organizational management. My specialty is employee relations. I've dabbled a little bit with recruitment, but really the onboarding process is more of my sweet spot. So looking forward to chatting with my colleagues on this fun topic.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Yeager, the TA specialist at Tandem HR. I got in recruiting about 3.5 years ago now, but I've been with Tandem for just over 2.5, running full cycle recruitment and can work with all of these lovely people on a daily basis.
Good afternoon. It's morning, I guess. Thanks for being here today. My name is Renee Vonks. I'm the VP of HR here for Tandem. I've been an HR professional for a little bit over 16 years. I started my journey in retail, actually worked for Target for about 13 years and started in operations and found myself in HR and never left. I'm all about brand loyalty and organizational loyalty and really promoting your company. I started off with Tandem being a manager of the HR client relations team and then just about 2 years ago became the internal VP of HR. So at Tandem, I have experience with both, client facing and internal roles. And so, honored to be in the role that I'm in today to really just focus on, aligning our organizational values with people that we bring into the organization and fostering a positive and inclusive workplace overall. Those are kind of my passion points, but I'm excited to talk about recruiting with all of you today.
Awesome. Thanks for the introductions, everyone. And I like that for this particular Ask the HR Expert, we have client-facing colleagues and Caitlin and Jackie, and we have internal-facing colleagues and Jason and Renee. So I think that'll be interesting. How do we work with clients? What do we do internally? And where differences might arise in philosophy of the organization. So let's go ahead and get started. To start the topic, I always like to start with something that's a question that's kind of broad, and just so that we're orienting the audience and ourselves to what we're talking about today. So this webinar is about recruiting and onboarding. So when we say those things, what are we referring to, and how do you distinguish between recruiting and onboarding? Does anyone want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Eager to talk about it. So something that comes to mind on the recruitment side is that it's essentially the internal sales aspect of HR. There's three main components when it comes to recruitment: planning, the recruitment itself, and then overall employee selection.
Yeah, so it's the company selling itself to colleagues that may want to join, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
absolutely.
think for the business owners on the call, I think a lot of the things that you think through around how you, position your organization in the market, right? Or how you want to put your company out there. You're thinking about the same things from the recruitment angle, right? Only it's how you bring people into your organization and get them enticed and excited about your mission. So I think the two align very much. All those things you're thinking about and putting into place to grow your company, you need to do that on the people side as well. So there's a lot of overlap there, in my opinion.
Yeah, Caitlin, I'm curious in your thoughts when you think about recruitment, is that how you would think about it from a salesy, the organization selling itself to potential hires?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there is a lot of overlap, but that recruiting piece is really like the first impression. Like that's really your hook to get them in. And then once you've gotten them in, onboarding is reeling them in, really getting them to stay within your organization. Because if you are having issues within your onboarding process, that might be a tendency for people to leave the organization within that first 90 days or so.
Yeah, so if recruiting is the sales arm of this topic, how are we getting people interested and getting them to want to join our organization? Onboarding is then what? Integrating them into the organization? Is that how you would describe that?
Yeah, making them feel welcome and really making sure that they have a place in the organization, that they feel that they can grow and succeed.
Yeah, I think onboarding, the aspect of onboarding is setting them up for success, helping position them in their role, allowing them to create arms so that they have extensions and resources in other departments to help them, and to truly follow through on your employee value proposition, all the things that you use, the tactics you use to sell and get that individual enticed about the organization. Now you need to follow through, right? And you need to follow through on those commitments that you made and help them understand what's in it for them, during those first 90 days I think is really crucial to be able to do that.
Yeah, it almost seems like in the recruitment phase, you're telling them the benefits of the organization, what the role would look like, and then in onboarding, they should start to see how that manifests itself. So they should start to become familiar with the benefits of the organization medical benefits, PTO, like what are the policies of the organization? Also get familiar with their role, the job description, what are the expectations of them? And then getting to, I guess, understand what the organization is about.
Yeah.
Like doing that as part of the onboarding process.
Absolutely.
Something to
Thank you.
consider too.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jason.
for Jackie.
Well, I was going to say something to consider. You've mentioned a couple of things, Marcus, is, during the onboarding process, but really during the recruitment process, it's important to share information about your benefits and your package. All of that represents your organization as well, and is going to be an important factor in that individual just determining whether they're going to join your organization or not. So setting the stage on what the company does, where you've come from, where you're going, getting them excited about the role, but also being very honest about what the role is and what the full, package is, from compensation to benefits.
Yeah, I was gonna say almost the exact same thing. Foundation, expectations across the board, wanting to make sure that they are set up for success within this, interview process, onboarding, and then overall, their employment. Wouldn't want to put anyone in a sticky situation per se.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with
Yeah.
that process, you are really selling that, but you do want to make sure that the expectations are very clear and realistic.
And they align, right? They align with your organization's values, but also the individual has to make that decision for themselves as well. Is this the right organization for me?
That's something that I was thinking about as we're talking about this, the recruiting, the selling, the telling them about the organization, what the benefits are, what the role is, the onboarding, kind of making that more concrete, introducing them to those concepts and ideas. It seems like there's probably a lot of prep work that goes into that before you communicate what the role is and what the benefits are. You need to understand that yourself as an organization, right? You need to understand what your value prop is. So I guess maybe that's the next question. How do you begin recruiting? What's the life cycle of recruiting for an employee? And does it start with kind of like knowing yourself as an organization?
Yeah, a clear understanding of the overall job function is the initial start. And then also with a well-defined job description, a couple ways you can get a well-defined job description, your own mind, of course, but also connecting with business unit leaders, cross collaboration, but also ChatGPT is a great, at least start. Don't heavily lean on it, but at least initial, bulletin points.
Yeah. Yeah, I think of we need to hire someone. We need to get someone interested. We need to get someone in here to do this. Well, what is that? Like, spend some time and kind of suss that out. Like, what are when you're creating the job description, right? Like, what exactly are the requirements of the job? And I don't know if any of you have been, I guess, unfortunate enough to be in a position where you're in a role that the person that hired you didn't exactly have a clear idea of what they wanted from that role. I have been in that situation. Unfortunately, it's very uncomfortable. So I think, like, before you start recruiting, you have to have a very precise idea of what you're recruiting for, what the job's gonna do, what are the measures of success, what are the metrics, how are you gonna measure is this person being successful or not? So yeah, I think connecting with the business unit leaders is a great idea.
And I
Yeah.
think
Well,
going back, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that we might have some individuals on the call that are, have small organizations and may not have other business leaders necessarily to tap into. But to Jason's point, ChatGPT or systems like that have been really beneficial just to get something quick and fast. But you, like Jason said, you don't want to rely on it, but it will give you those high level things that you need to know.
Get you started.
Just to get you started, because getting started is the hardest part. And then you can add and subtract from there, and then continue to build onto it. Be realistic with your candidate too, and let them know, look, this is a new role, we're building it, but you have a good foundation at least to start from.
I kind of want to go back to Caitlin's point from a little bit earlier, is the recruitment process is the first impression. So there's a lot of work and time and energy that needs to be put into it. Think about all the things you're thinking about and how you can build a great experience from the start. So we talked about, having a clear job description, maybe even creating a scorecard that outlines the work that needs to get done and what are the outcomes of the work that's being performed. So a scorecard, job descriptions, even in the way that you post, you create a post, what language and verbiage you're using to make sure that you are grabbing the right audience for the position and you're being truthful in what you're looking for. So, for example, and you can go off on many tangents in this topic, but like, being honest about where you're at from an organization, whether you're remote or hybrid, or you expect your colleagues or employees to be in the office, like you have to be clear and transparent because you don't want to have those discrepancies and just, what the situation actually is. And to Marcus's point, you don't want someone to come in and be like, wow, I was sold on something entirely different. Just like with clients, we don't want to say we sold them on something different and then we actually can't do that. It's kind of the same situation. You want to be honest through and through. But being honest in the fact that companies evolve and grow. And while this is the position today, your position very well could change over time and evolve as we evolve. So just making sure that you have that caveat in there. But all of the items that you put in place really encapsulates that experience, right? And you want that to be a solid one from the start.
For sure. And I think with the job postings, the details do really matter, to your point, Renee. Even what the title is, even the keywords that are within that job posting, because if you're utilizing a platform like Indeed, as I'm sure many people are, when the candidate goes to search for the position, they might put in front office or, assistant, where you might really want to find coordinator type people. So if your job doesn't have those keywords or titles that people might be searching for, you might be missing out on those potential candidates seeing your posting.
And on that point, so Caitlin, would you recommend, like, if we put this time into creating a job description, it sounds like we don't just post that job description on Indeed, right? We create a job post that might take language from that, but it's the job post is distinct from the job description, right?
Yeah, I think that that's definitely a shortened and condensed version that has your selling points. It is still clear in what you're wanting out of the role, what experience you might require for this person. So it's really clear and upfront, but is significantly shorter than your job description and really hits and highlights on those key points and what your organization is about. I've seen some really great taglines too that pull people in to just provide a one sentence summary of what your organization's goals and values are.
Yeah. I was going to mention that we can do, and probably will at some point, an entirely different Ask the HR Expert webinar on like a company's vision, mission, values. But that, I start a lot of things there in my head. If you're going to tell someone what are we about as an organization, that's a great place to start, to have a vision, mission, values. And there are some studies that suggest that more and more that's what people are looking for out of a job. They're looking for a sense of identity and a sense of belonging, more than just the job title and the pay, which we haven't talked about. How do you know what to post? I mean, there are some states, right, and some platforms that will require you to post a salary range. I guess two questions. Do you recommend doing that? And this can be for anybody. For Jason, I don't know what you see, but do you recommend posting a salary range? And do you have to post a salary range? And how do you come up with that type of information?
Two-part, three-part question there. Love
Yeah,
it. So
I ramble.
Connect with your, the appropriate people internally to have a clear but competitive compensation, whether if it's a base salary or even an OTE expectation. Want to make sure it's very clear. You could use tools such as it's within LinkedIn, actually, a relatively new tool that our contact introduced called Talent Insight. You could actually go within your industry competitors to see kind of where they're finding success in respective states, and then also where they're kind of generally giving that that wide range, wide but selective, of course. When it comes to putting it on the job posting itself, that's where it gets a little tricky. Each state has different regulations. Some states require it, some states don't. So you always want to stay up to date on your rules there and overall laws and regulations.
Just to add to that a little bit, you do want to stay on top of compensation analysis, because you may have specific positions that you hire for constantly in your organization. You want to make sure that you are competitive in the market. And then also for those moments when you're hiring into a new job title, a brand new position to your company, and you have no idea, you've got to do that research, or else you're going to have, people that are experts in the area or are looking within the market, and you're off base, and you're going to lose candidates that way. So I personally would recommend putting the salary range on all postings, because a range is a range for a reason. It doesn't mean that it gives you flexibility, right, to provide compensation based on experiences and backgrounds and skills and abilities. And in those states that require it, right, maybe you didn't put the range in that state where someone is applying, and then it becomes a legal issue, right? So I would just say be conservative and just put it on all of your postings. And again, be very vocal and clear on it's a range for a reason, right? And here's how we determine where your pay falls within that range.
Absolutely. And then once everything is circled back and you have everything across the board, that's when the job goes live. I highly recommend your organization having an ATS. Using an ATS has integrations within LinkedIn, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, whatever, social media platform for recruitment measures you're using. Once you post it on the ATS, it, goes through all platforms. So once it's live, then you're going to reach out to candidates accordingly. Some ATS has an idea or a concept of having, individual candidates be vetted out based on their qualifications and experience. So it all comes down to preference at the end of the day.
When you
Jason,
say ATS, you mean applicant tracking system?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, the way that I have explained applicant tracking system to people before is that it's like a I don't know, like a publishing platform. If you post the job on the ATS, it will send it to multiple job boards and multiple sites so that you're not logging into each one. It's a way to kind of multiply is that how you conceptualize it too?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
then making sure that it's on your own, career page as a whole. So that's the first one to start with, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. For pay, you can look in LinkedIn, like what are other, competitors doing for similar job titles? Are there other tools out there that you could use to determine what's an appropriate salary range for a particular job? Anybody?
Yeah, the US Bureau of Labor Statistics has some pretty good information as well.
Okay, and that's information from the federal government on what's reported to them. Here's what they see for various job titles.
Yeah, and they do provide
Okay.
regional information as well.
Okay, yeah, I guess my only word of caution on this is like if a client is looking at like user reported data like on Glassdoor or something like that, I would tend to not trust that. I would look for something that's sourced outside of the some like self-reporting, right? So Bureau of Labor Statistics or like LinkedIn can analyze what are these positions making as opposed to self-reported data.
There are many compensation tools out there. We internally use ERI, Economic Research Institute, great tool for us, and our clients.
That's like a third party that does, yeah.
Yeah, there's many out there, but that's just an example of one.
So going back to the ATS, once we figure out the job description, we convert that into a wonderfully worded job post that is enticing, that tells them about the benefits and tells them about the role. We put it on our ATS and the job post goes live. What happens next? How do you assess? Like, hopefully you get a lot of people to apply. How do you assess those candidates as they come in, and what should clients be or what should companies be looking at when they're doing that?
Multifunction, quick skim obviously is the initial thought, but utilizing your systems, cloud AI, if you've heard of it, Marcus, I believe you've been using it in past. If you want to give some light on what that resource is.
Yeah, I've used in the past more for preparing for interviews. There's a tool called Claude AI, CLAUDE.ai. You can upload resumes, cover letters, and ask it to summarize those for you and come up with interview questions. And that's obviously after you've picked who you want to talk to. But yeah, skimming who you want to talk to. I mean, if you get a lot of applicants, that can be a chore in and of itself. So how do you skim through who applies?
So underneath every job description will have that relevant skills and experience. So you'll take a look at that if it's either preferred or required. And then during the quick skim, or for say, quick or not, while you're reading the resume, want to make sure that if they're hitting these marks, years of experience within the industry, do they have a highly preferred, system, whether if it's Prism HR or Salesforce, whatever it could be, those highly qualified individuals will, get a quick response to schedule that initial screening call. During the initial screening call, that's where you'll lay down that foundation, resorting back to what we originally talked about, expectations and overall role.
Jason brought up earlier of meeting with like the manager, the hiring manager, and in some cases, to Jackie's point, you don't have a hiring manager. You've got a very small team, and you're a one man or one woman show, for example. But you really want to make sure you know exactly what you're looking for before the screening process, because that lays the foundation for who you're looking for, how you vet out certain candidates, how you move candidates forward, and then what you're looking for within the interview. So you're going to want to determine what specific set of skills or type of experience you're looking for. And so that's where that hiring manager sharing that with the recruiter is extremely important. So they have a very clear picture of what that process looks like. And in some cases, even weighing out some of those terms, to say like, I have to have this is my non-negotiable versus these are the ones that I'd be okay with kind of leaving behind. So I just think having that clear set of criteria you're looking for that recruiter is going to help them move through the process a lot more seamlessly.
Good
Going
point. If
back
you
to
have,
that,
oh, go ahead, Jackie. Go ahead.
well, going back to the ATS, the applicant tracking system too, if you have something like that, you may not have the luxury of having having a recruiter on staff. And so,
Yeah.
an individual can go into that applicant tracking system, set it up so that those applications that are coming through, those resumes coming through, it's reading those keywords and pulling out what those key identifiers are to meet your minimum qualifications. And then it can automatically send a no thank you letter. Unfortunately, and you can put your verbiage together and it automatically sends it out for you too. So there's a lot of those tools. Those type of tools can be really helpful to save you time, to vet those things out, and to narrow down your search so that you get your 5 to 10 candidates that you really want to look at.
To
Yeah,
piggyback on that. Oh yeah.
I was going to say, it seems like depending on, you can do it through the applicant tracking system, you can do it manually, or you can have a recruiter do it. But the key ribbon going through that is you need to know what is a must-have, what is a I'd like to have. And so that makes it, if you have that makes it much, much easier. Like, well, this is a must-have, right? Like, in some roles, you may have to have like a certification, right? If you're going to hire, bad example, if you're going to hire a lawyer, I'm sorry, I see that you don't have your law degree, you're not licensed in this state. Well, I can't consider you then. Sorry. Like having that can help you, quickly like narrow the field.
Yeah.
Sorry,
And
Jason, go ahead.
yeah, no, to piggyback on that, once again, all ATS systems do have a filter option, and filter being, an automated decline email or an automated, response to schedule an initial screening call. I highly recommend, if your ATS does not have that filter option, maybe, take a look at other options, because it's very beneficial and time saving.
Let's jump to the other part of the equation. So we've been talking about recruiting. Let's start to talk about onboarding a little bit. So let's fast forward a little bit in the process. So we've posted our job, we have We've kind of reviewed our applicants. We've excluded people. We've done interviews. That's something that we haven't talked about, which we could do a whole webinar on that, doing the interviews. How do you structure them? Cadence to that. Let's say we've done that, and then we've decided who we want to hire, and we've presented them with an offer letter. How do you pivot to the onboarding process from that point? So I'm assuming, I guess, that, you know, when we decide who we want, we give them an offer letter, we have a signed offer letter. That feels like a transition from recruiting. We've selected someone to, okay, now we got to onboard them. So how do you make that pivot, and how can organizations ensure a smooth transition from, you know, new hires in the recruiting process to the onboarding process, especially if you're in a remote work environment?
I think
Long question.
I'll kind of kick us off. I think timing is the essence after you provide a job offer. So just to take a step back, I would always kind of request that you get a response within a certain period of time. Typically, we lean on 3 business days, just so you know we're excited about you. We hope that you're excited about us, and it's a mutual relationship, and that will move forward. So that's important. And then obviously initiating a background and drug test, depending on, you know, what you do within, you know, compliance for your company and for the state that they're going to be working in. But it's kind of a celebratory event, right? The person has decided, yes, I'm in it, right? I want to go ahead and accept this offer. So I think between everyone that was involved in that process of making the selection, you know, from the recruiter to the hiring manager to HR, everyone should really celebrate internally, and then celebrate with the candidate to say, you know, we're really excited about having you on. And then depending on, you know, when the offer is signed and when the start date is, it's starting to work on that relationship, right? You know, during that period of time is keep them captivated. I think some companies probably see that they offer, and then like you just don't hear back from the candidate, which is it's very, very challenging situation when that happens. And so you need to make sure that you're still captivating the candidate to get them excited about their first day. And so that's keeping them warm. Or Jay, I don't know if you want to share anything in particular that you do, because you do such a great job of staying connected with candidates prior to their first day.
Absolutely. Keeping them just informed, you know, regularly. So after the background check is out, obviously offers contingent upon successful background check. But, you know, if they're starting, you know, 2 weeks from the initial, you know, offer acceptance, or maybe even a month, because in some cases, depending on the role and industry as a whole, that could be an option. You know, weekly touch bases. Hey, how's everything doing? Any questions? Once the background check is completed, then that's where you do that warm transition. HR coordinator, provide a name of who's going to be reaching out to you on that onboarding information. Always staying connected, and then having the initial, people on that on the email is very important. Making sure that all parties are aware: business unit leaders, IT for any IT equipment setup, everybody across the board.
Yeah, I think Renee, as you were talking about having we want to hear back from you in like 3 business days when you make an offer. I think that would also kind of prevent or maybe the person from shopping that offer, right? If they're interviewing at a lot of different places, if you make an offer, they may take that to another place that they're interviewing and say, hey, I got an offer from Tandem and it's at this amount. Can you beat this? Right. And so I think if you have a deadline on it, it won't necessarily prevent that from happening. But if they ask to extend the deadline, or it may inevitably lead to those conversations to, well, are you interviewing somewhere else? Do you have any other offers? And it may give you more information than you had if you didn't have a deadline on the offer.
And you likely have other candidates too that you want to keep
Right.
warm, just in case your number one doesn't turn up, right? So you want to, give that 3 days, which is a good,
Mm-hmm.
Range to provide. And if they can't make that decision, then, we have
Might
to
be a
move on to
sign
the
they're
next
not the
one,
right
because you've got to
person.
fill that position. You don't want a warm body, but you need somebody to be doing that work, and we can't wait 2 weeks while they're making a decision.
Yeah.
Great.
Jackie, I think that's a great point, though, is you don't want to turn down all your candidates, right? Just because you've made one offer, don't turn down all your candidates, only unless you're sure they're not the right person. You do want to have a backup plan just in the event. Like I said, time is of the essence, and there's a vacant role and someone needs to perform that work. So if you have to go back to the pool, it's going to take you a while, right? To find that person. So also, maybe a question of how do you make this experience more personable? I didn't bring this up earlier, but as I'm going through the interview process, I will typically say to a candidate, we're interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing us and vice versa, right? Because as much as I'm going to ask you and maybe drill you with a ton of questions, I want to create space so you can make sure this is the best fit for you. You know what you're coming into and you have questions that can get answered as well. But then it's actually taking that information and also asking them, what do you need from your next employer? What are you looking for? And then really remembering that and taking it and applying it to the onboarding experience to make it more personal and specific to them.
Yeah, and I think that matters a lot. I think just the connections that you make with people make all the difference in the world. So Jason, when you said, introducing them to, other people, or this person's going to reach out to me, that seems like a critical step, because up to that point, they've probably interviewed with the recruiter, they probably interviewed with HR, they may have interviewed with the hiring manager or one other person, but depending on the size of the organization, they may be working with a lot of other people. So how are they going to meet those people, and how are they going to form connections with those people? Right. That seems like something that would be important to do in the onboarding process. And actually that leads us into the next question that we got before the session, which is, what are some key components of designing an engaging onboarding experience that fosters long-term employee retention? And I guess, does it start with those relationships, or what other ideas do you guys have for doing that?
Yeah, obviously the warm transitions, but always, making sure and reassuring them that they made the right decision of joining, their next employer. Making sure that they're happy with their decision is something very beneficial, because we wouldn't want to have them, have nerves on their first day, even though nerves are always expected, but at least to ease that tension, and making sure that they're, just aware.
Yeah, they've left another employer probably to take this job, right? So they're taking a big risk. So they want to feel like I made the right choice. So, stepping it back a little bit too on the offer letter, making sure that offer letter is extremely clear. Who am I reporting to? Where is my office located? If there is one, if it's remote, how remote? What does that mean? What's my compensation? When do my benefits kick in? Answer all of those questions as much as possible in that offer letter. In some cases, states require it, so you might as well just do it across the board. But it's retention, it's job satisfaction, productivity. You're investing a lot of time and money, as are they, in taking this role, and so making sure that we're solidifying that and continue to think every day when they show up the next day, you're happy they came back, but also I made the right decision. I feel comfortable here. I'm welcomed here. And the welcome piece, I think, is the most important piece.
And I think of like even small things like making someone feel comfortable and welcome. If it's an in-person environment, if they're in an office, like, what do you wear on the first day, right? Like something they may not think about until the night before. I'll just speak from experience, until the night before, when I'm stressed about it, like, well, shoot, I never asked that. Like, I don't want to look silly. I don't want to look overdressed. Like, what should I wear? Where are the bathrooms? What do people do for lunch? Like, those very practical, they almost seem silly, but like, if you proactively share that with someone, you're also, you're not just like calming those anxieties for them and helping them connect, but you're also kind of sharing with them, this is what we are about here. This is how things work here. And they'll start to feel more connected, almost immediately.
And I think
Yeah,
tell them
go ahead,
that
Caitlin.
we're prepared. We have really thought out every step of this process, and we're ready for you to join the team and super excited. And I think that all of those little details do make a big difference. And I think sometimes it can be overlooked when there is a staffing issue where you're short-staffed, you're trying to find somebody, you really need somebody in, And the focus is so pushed upon them in the process, and really coming back to multiple different points that everyone has made, that we do have to think about how we're presenting ourselves and making sure that all those details are buttoned up for everybody throughout the entirety of the process.
Having a
Absolutely.
training plan prepared and set up for at least the first week is probably the most important thing you can do, letting them know we're gonna provide lunch every day for a week, so they don't have to worry about where to go, what to do, those type of things, but also who are they meeting with? If you're lucky enough to have a large enough organization, so it's not one person training on every little thing, so that they can build those relationships, but also, you know, training is hard because you have to do your own job, and now you're training somebody else to do theirs, right? And then you've got a gap in the organization because no one's been doing this job. So now you've got to share that love with everyone in the organization to get that person trained, build the relationships, and also, build that time in to do the work.
Yeah, I think it takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a village to train an employee. So essentially, like, who is that village? Who's a part of the village, and who's responsible for the transfer of information, right? Like, who is it going to be? Is it going to be their manager? There's a number of different initiatives that you could leverage. You could leverage a team trainer. You could leverage a mentor, use a buddy system, whatever that looks like. And it doesn't have to be one size fits all solution or one person in particular. It could be a number of different people to show you different things in an organization. And again, it all depends on the role and your resources available on really how that's established. But I think the more people you can involve, the more that they're going to feel that they have different people to lean on, and maybe not just one person in particular. But I think establishing that, to Jackie's point, is having that first week really laid out is really important to show, to Caitlin's point, you've thought through this, right? And we're ready for you.
Renee, you said something earlier that like onboarding is about like setting the candidate up for success, or setting that new hire up for success. And what you were just talking about, like who is the village? The way I think of that is, well, who are the people that they're going to need to know to be successful in their role, right? And if it's a small company, they probably need to know everyone. If it's a medium-sized company or a larger company, well, they like thinking through who are they going to need to interact with, aside from just obviously their manager. They're going to need to know their manager, and if they're on a team, they're going to need to know their team. But what other departments, what other teams are they going to need to interact with, and how do we make sure that they know those people and understand those people? So I don't know if you could share a little bit about like how we try and do that at Tandem with, we're a mostly virtual environment. But we have, like, for example, later this week, I have a meeting with new hires. They're not in my department, but that we may interact. And so I meet them when they come on board, and I tell them about what I do and answer questions. So how did you set up that structure?
We call them, key people meet and greets. So it's essentially determining who that new hire needs to meet with. To your point, Marcus, is like, who is going to help them be successful? What information do they need? And it's not prescribing exactly what happens in that meeting. Those meetings should really become fluid, because every new candidate coming in has a different background and experience, and they may be a little bit more forward advanced in certain areas, and maybe, need to know certain information in other areas. So it can't be kind of prescribed. This is the agenda. This is the only thing we cover. Allow that to be an organic conversation between the new hire and the individual who's already enrolled, to say, this is how we work together, right? And I'm a resource to you, and here's how we can make connections going forward. So establishing who they need to meet with is really important. Also, how do you introduce that individual to the organization? At Tandem, we do a biweekly town hall where we introduce all of our new hires, so that everyone knows that they've joined, where they're coming from, what their job title is. And or team meetings. We have huddles across the organization on a daily basis. We have team meetings. So figuring out at what point in time and coordinating efforts to make sure that that individual is in the meeting they're supposed to be, so that they can be, introduced at the right time. I think that's key, because you don't want to introduce them to their team a month later, right? You want to do it. It's timely. It needs to happen timely, so that they can be properly welcomed by everyone. Chats are great, right? To just connect. And we use Microsoft Teams at Tandem, and that's really beneficial from a remote standpoint because we can have our meetings, virtually, and you can make those connections in those chats as well, and celebrate with gifts or just, certain pictures or things to help the individual feel comfortable.
Yeah, I like those intentional meetings that, hey, they're new hires, you need to talk with them. It's not prescribed at all, so it is very free flowing. I like that about it, but we know the point is for us to understand each other and get to know each other a little bit. And I don't know, something about it is less awkward than like a new hire, like coffee reception, like, hey, welcome to the team. Like, we have our own time to talk about, what are you going to be doing here? Well, here's what I do, and here's how we might work together. I'm going to do a quick time check. It's 12:15. So we have several more questions, but there's one I really want to get to about social media. So we'll take that one in just a second. But again, a reminder, if you are a participant, go ahead and click that Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen and throw any questions that you might have in there, because we will get to those after we take the social media question. So the question that we got before the session is, what role does social media play in modern recruitment efforts, and how can companies utilize it effectively? This seems like something very important, just as we're very social media driven as a culture. So I don't know, Jason, do you want to kick us off there? How does social media play into the recruitment process?
Yeah, all organizations typically have their own, website. So keeping that up to date is beneficial, but also to piggyback on their own website, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, making sure you have the necessary information about the company organization and keeping up to date on, responses on Glassdoor and whether if they're good or bad, having that response, then, providing that feedback to potential, candidates down the line. Social media is ever evolving. Right? It's not going anywhere. So making sure that we're staying up to date with it, not only personally, but within your organization.
We all know that life is all about connections, and it's who you know sometimes. So if Jason has a job posting, he'll let us all know. We all post it on LinkedIn, and it could be a connection that I have, and maybe not my connection, but my connection's connection that finds that individual that sees this posting, that finds it interesting, and we have a new colleague. So it's just trickle down effect.
Yeah, making those tools available to your internal team, letting them know where the job postings are, links, again, to get on social media sites and promote different positions is key. I think recruiting really doesn't need to be owned by just the recruiter. And we've talked about in some cases, your company may be small and you might not have a recruiter at all. So lean on your internal team to help with recruiting efforts, and then also anyone in your network. Word can travel fast, and in our cases, referrals have been a huge source of talent for us. That's been really helpful. So I think that's important for sure.
Yeah. And I think platforms like LinkedIn can really give candidates an insight into what your organization is like on a day-to-day basis, through any employee engagement events they might do, community organizations that they have worked with in the past, and kind of show them what you're like, how fun you are, what you have going on, what your values are. So they will look at all of those posts and help determine if it is the right fit for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just think about this personally. Like, if I am going to meet a prospective client, a new client, if I'm going to meet a vendor, if I hadn't talked to them before, I'm going to look them up on LinkedIn before we meet. I'm going to see, hey, do we know anyone in common? And if we do, and I want to know more, but I think it's like a way of gathering information, right? I'm going to learn about you by not only what you put, but by who you're connected to. And if I know someone, I might reach out to them and get their perspective on it. And so from that standpoint, it's, the social media is like your reputation, your digital reputation. And so that can be scary, but it can also be an asset. And that's, it's not something you can just snap your fingers and clean up or manage tightly. It's an ongoing thing, right? how you're meeting people, how you're leaving them, like what type of impression you're leaving them with. Because those connections can be a real asset for you. We talk about it, from a sales perspective, the absolute best lead we can get is a referral, because we know the odds of that sale converting are way, way higher than if someone just stumbles across, our website. Same thing for candidates, I would think, right? If they're referred by a current colleague or, someone like that, much, much better chance they're going to join, because they're going to make assumptions about the company because of what they know about the mutual reference point, right? So it's who you know, but digitized, and it's something I think you have to pay attention to.
And I think you know, may want to incentivize your internal colleagues for helping with recruitment efforts. And so depending on your financial state, right, you may want to start off that way, or you may get to a spot where you have a hard time, getting certain talent, and then maybe using that as a leverage, right, to say, hey, team, we're going to go ahead and put out a referral program. We're going to incentivize you for helping us recruit. You could start that from the beginning, or start that later on. But I think it's a good idea because it gets people excited about the process. And could be a side hustle for some people too, which can become an incentive for them.
Yeah, I think, also I'm thinking about the sites that you use. We've been talking about LinkedIn, but if you're, in a different industry, different environment, I know we have healthcare clients that they find their nurses almost exclusively through like Facebook message groups. And so it's, different people go different places. It's not a one size fits all thing. But I think the same concepts apply. So we have 0 questions in our queue. So I think that either means we've done a wonderful job of explaining everything, or we've put everyone to sleep. So Sierra, I don't know if you want to share your screen and put up our last slide there with my contact information. Yeah, we'll give everyone a few more minutes to submit. But while we do that, and while we put up the contact information on the last slide, you want to go around and parting thoughts, parting shots, last words of wisdom?
Yeah, I got something. So going back to the initial recruitment, always, incorporate some behavioral or cognitive assessment to get a, better understanding of the potential candidate, whether if it's the predictive index or the one score, just, get a better idea. And then also these assessments do generate interview questions as well. So multiple functions of how to generate quality questions for an interview.
Nice.
I'll chime in too and just share that ultimately, you want to have some data that tells you how well you did the process, right? From recruitment all the way to onboarding. And so I think something that would be wise or recommended would to implement an onboarding survey for your new hires, just to really check in on those really important points. How well did we integrate our, vision, mission, values into your onboarding? Or, how well did we instill, the need for great customer service, for example? Or, tell me about the resources that were available. If you could rate them 1 to 5, did they help you be successful? Those are just a couple of examples. I think that's really valuable. I think that your entire process of recruitment and onboarding needs to be revisited and frequently, because it's extremely important process. You're bringing individuals into your company to help your company grow and be successful. So the decision alone is extremely important. And in many cases, you don't want to get it wrong, right? But you'll get it wrong many times, right? But the goal ultimately is to learn from that, and continue to improve on the talent you're bringing in, and your people are your greatest assets. And that's important to remember.
I can go
next.
next.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that as you're onboarding and you're doing your training, meet with your employees, schedule frequent one-on-ones in the first week, maybe once a day, in the next couple of weeks, a couple of times a week, moving at least to a bi-weekly, monthly basis. the understanding where the individual is, how they train, what they know, what they don't know, where they feel comfortable. It's a lather, rinse, repeat type of process that you want to continue until they feel comfortable and they just put their hands up and say they're fine. So it's just you got to be patient with it and keep doing the same things over and over again.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that consistency is key. You know, you might try something one time and that may have worked in 2020, and it does not work now. So revisiting those things, I think, is very beneficial, but really always coming back to some of those details, like within that first interview that you have with a candidate, making sure that you are warm, welcome, and making them feel comfortable, because the interview process is scary. Changing a new job is scary. So making sure that you're really keeping those touch points with them, you are communicative and responsive, paying attention to all those little details, the messaging, telling them where to park. All of those things are just as important as your large process and looking at the metrics.
And I think my parting thought would be that, it's really important to get this right, or as right as you can. Like Jackie said, it's always a work in progress, and, struggle to be a little bit better each time you do it. But it's also really important to do it right today in the era of, very low unemployment, remote work. I think, selecting the right candidates, getting them integrated into your organization is really critical. And I think that all starts from knowing your company, knowing what you're about, and knowing what this role would entail and how that fits into your overall strategy. I think there's, a lot of magic that can come from that, where you can lay out for someone, hey, here is what you're going to do, and here's how that's going to help drive our company forward. I think that's what people are looking for, and that helps them build a connection to your company. So, as you can see, we're going to deliver a recording of the session to your inbox. Thank you all for attending. Thank you to all of our panelists today. This was a really fun topic, and a really deep topic too. There's a lot to cover here. So thanks to all of you, and we will do this again next month on another topic. So thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.